participants, I would like to welcome our distinguished keynote speaker, Honorable Mayor of Constanta, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's really my pleasure and honor to be the moderator of this very important session dedicated to, our energy transition and investment opportunities. Actually, the topic of this very important conference, which is organized on biannual basis, is very important nowadays, especially during these extraordinary circumstances caused by consequences of pandemic, by ongoing war in one of our neighboring countries, by climate change, by many other factors. And all the topics of this conference are interrelated. We are discussing the issues related to energy security, energy efficiency, security of supply, and many other issues. But the key, of course, keys are energy transition and cooperation, our regional cooperation, and we have to take immediate action for coming up with new innovative approaches, coming up with new mechanisms for solution of very urgent issues relating to energy sector. I represent the Permanent International Secretariat of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, which was founded 30 years ago as the platform for peace, prosperity, cooperation through the economic dimension. We focus on economic dimension, on economic cooperation, on project orientation. But unfortunately, there are factors which create obstacles, difficulties for our smooth work, activities, and cooperation. And as I said, this year in June, by the way, 25th of June is a very symbolic and important day for our organization, is the BISEC Day, and we will be celebrating 30th anniversary of its foundation. And the energy is one of the key priorities, one of the areas of cooperation among the 13 member states of the organization. We have different directions, including science, technology, tourism, transport, and of course energy. Once again, let me welcome all of you at this special session. Today, before giving the floor to our keynote speaker, I would like first to introduce him. Our keynote speaker is Mr. Tudor Constantinescu, Principal Advisor to the Director General for Energy, European Commission. He is the Principal Advisor since March 2011. Before starting with the Commission, he set up as founding Executive Director the Buildings Performance Institute Europe, the European pole of a global best practice network focusing on energy efficiency in buildings. He was the president of the Romanian Agency for Energy Conservation, the national government institution in charge of energy efficiency policies and programs and promoting renewable energy sources. For the period 2008-9, he ensured the rotating presidency of the ENR network of European energy agencies. In the private sector, he had as a consultant the development of the energy efficiency strategy for Petrom, largest oil and gas producer in SE Europe, and served for 2 years on the board of Romanian Energy Efficiency Fund. For 11 years, he worked for the Energy Charter Secretariat in Brussels, coordinating energy efficiency and related environmental activities on international level, conducting large-scale country reviews and studies on financing and fiscal instruments. Tudor Constantinescu holds a master's degree in energy engineering from the UPB, a master's degree in applied economics from the Institute of Advanced Studies, Vienna, and a Doctor of Science degree on regulatory economics in the energy sector from the UPB. Well, I would suggest, since Mr. Constantinescu will be online, I will suggest immediately after his presentation to go to possible questions. to avoid any technical difficulties for the second connection with him. So, is it everything okay from the technical point of view?
Hello. 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 Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, Mr. Constantinescu. It's our pleasure to see you on the screen. Our welcome and warm regards from Romania, from all participants for Costinești. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. And I'm sorry, but only now I got the sound. So therefore, I have not heard anything from what you have said in the introduction. So I apologize. I would have liked to know what you are referring to. But in any case, I will try to say at least what we are doing in Brussels and at the Commission level in this area. So, first of all, again, thank you very much for the invitation. Mulțumesc foarte mult organizatorilor și CNRCB for această invitație. Mă bucur să fiu alături de noastră.
I'm happy to be here with you.
I will shift to English for the rest of my intervention, which I will deliver on behalf of our DG for Energy at the European Commission. As you know, and this panel, I think it's very important, the Black Sea energy potential investment. This was also underlined yesterday in the opening, including by Ambassador Cămănescu. And as you know, our economies hardly started to recover after the COVID crisis, that we enter a new crisis because of the sharp increase in the energy prices, first because of the demand, and then because of the war of Russia on Ukraine, the invasion in February. And therefore, we need to pass through these challenges together, through this crisis, and to invest in the transformation of the energy system in a way as to look now to long-term decarbonization also, but at the same time an energy security, at the same time at affordability, more than ever. So investing in the transformation of the energy system was already part of the solution on the path to climate neutrality in line with the European Green Deal, as I have underlined yesterday, and triggering a combined agenda for energy and for investments, accelerating the energy transition. And the response following the pandemics, at least European level, with 1.8 trillion euros multi-annual financial framework combined with the recovery and resilience plans, really start to give a strong impetus for economic recovery and ensuring that by investing more now will lower the cost of the energy system overall over the life cycle, and this we try to promote in this field. But the crisis deepened now with the invasion of Russia on Ukraine, and we are seeing record prices on the spot markets. And this issue is everywhere in Europe and is of concern in all regions, and the same goes for the Black Sea. The Commission proposed a plan called REPowerEU to reduce dependence on Russian fossil fuels well before 2030, actually by 2027. And the plan focuses on how to replenish gas stocks for next winter, diversify our gas supplies and transition to renewable gases, accelerating the Green Deal, boosting energy efficiency, increasing renewables and electrification, and address infrastructure. Also promoting new solutions and new energy carriers as hydrogen, because in order to achieve the decarbonization of the energy system, we need to decarbonize both the electrons and molecules of it. And we see a growing role in this respect for hydrogen. And this is very much valid for all member states and for all countries, including all the countries which now are at the conference and are investing in the Black Sea region. The plan contains measures to respond also to high energy prices, including guidance to member states on regulating prices in exceptional circumstances, as well as redistribution of revenues from high energy sector profits and emission trading to consumers. The state aid rules have being revised and also offer options for member states to provide short-term supports to companies affected by energy prices, and will consult member states who are in a continuous dialogue on how to promote additional measures. Now, the priority, it is to ensure that we have a functioning energy market, delivering security of supply, competition, and climate neutrality. More investments are needed in clean technologies, in system integration, efficiency, and interconnectivity, which is one of the priorities we think also for the region there. Let me say a few words about the EU external energy strategy, which came with the REPowerEU. Because the crisis has devastating consequences for the people and the environment across the globe, and the world action is needed, the EU felt it was really much needed now to help ensuring sustainable, secure, and affordable energy worldwide, and at the same time to overcome the vulnerability. For this reason, we published this external energy engagement strategy also on 18th of May, together with in the package of the REPowerEU, which builds on progressing domestic energy policies, reinforcing engagement with partners, and strengthening climate and energy diplomacy. The main objectives are to facilitate the diversification of fossil fuel imports and clean energy acceleration efforts required by REPowerEU, then to lead to accelerate the global green and just energy transition, to support Ukraine and other countries directly affected by the war, as well as mitigating the impact on partners across the globe. And last but not least, to reinforce and develop long-term partnership and to secure sustainable, secure, and affordable energy. Green transition is a clear dimension and is now not only for the long-term decarbonization, and this was one of the key objectives of the Commission and the priorities launched by President von der Leyen on carbon neutrality, but now is also essential for energy security. This message to our international partners remains that energy transition is a main instrument for long-term energy security as well, and therefore we stand ready to cooperate with all interested countries to accelerate the transition towards clean energy system and decarbonized economies. We made also, and I will refer to this, an EU energy platform, because the current geopolitical context demonstrates the need to secure the EU energy supply at an affordable prices, and in doing so, to phase out the dependency on Russian gas. Therefore, this energy platform will help the voluntary common purchase of gas, of LNG, of hydrogen, pooling demand and structure at EU level, ensuring efficient and transparent and long-term use of imports, storage, and gas infrastructure, coordinating and enforcing EU international cooperation with energy partners. The platform is open to EU Eastern Associated Partners and to the Western Balkans, with planned cooperation with the Energy Community Secretariat. The Commission set this platform to coordinate security of gas supply across, and is, as I said, mentioned before, open to all these countries, in particular to Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, the Western Balkans. And we need to mention also that in addition to LNG, we expect additional gas to come via pipelines from alternative suppliers. And this is another dimension. Here I would like to mention, of course, Norway, Algeria, but also Azerbaijan on this part of the Black Sea. And in addition to this, we need to work together and to support Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, the Western Balkans as some of more vulnerable partners. This includes also integration of electricity markets in order to accelerate electrification where it's possible and cost effective, and facilitate the integration of renewables in the wider region and the adoption of future implementation of 2030 energy and climate targets. I would like here to spend a word to mention the potential for offshore renewable energy also in the Black Sea. This is a very important potential which was not yet tapped. And we really think in this respect that through the provisions we have now on 1 year deadlines for permitting of renewable energy projects through dedicated go areas for renewables, including offshore renewables, we look forward to see also how the Connecting Europe facility with a dedicated call for cross-border renewable energy projects can be used. And renewables in the Black Sea have now an excellent opportunity to support cross-border flows of renewables in the region. This is one of the important dimensions which I wanted to say today. Back to the issue of infrastructure in general, energy transition poses clearly a significant challenge for Europe, and in the context of ensuring stable and uninterrupted energy supply, we believe Europe will be moving towards greater share of electricity in the mix, and the larger share of renewables powering it being onshore, offshore. To tackle this challenge, we'll need new type of infrastructure. So this is why our infrastructure policy will need to reflect that. We'll need more power grids, smart grids. We'll also need pipelines for hydrogen and for CO2, storage, infrastructure, electrolyzers, and much more. One word here, I would like to go a bit deeper on the issue of infrastructure also for hydrogen, because we see this shift towards renewable and decarbonized gases and hydrogen. And the package we have issued in December, the second part of Fit for 55, was actually dedicated to hydrogen and decarbonization of the gas system. And therefore, at least at transmission level, we very much support that transmission gas pipelines are converted also to hydrogen, that new pipelines are dedicated and made to accommodate hydrogen. And this is very important for the energy transition. It's very important also for the Black Sea in combination with the potential it has for renewables, for offshore renewables, to have more of this integrated planning for electricity, gas, renewable gases, hydrogen for the future. The Black Sea region, as well as the whole Europe, it's very important to look also into the future and to tap all the potential opportunities which comes from these developments in technologies in which we invested over decades now start to bring fruits. Anyhow, in short term, we need investments in all type of infrastructure, and it's fundamental to build and secure a strong and reliable internal energy market, as well as to secure the transition to climate neutrality. Over the past years, we diversified sources and strengthened the security of supply. And thanks to the EU policies and financial support to Connecting Europe facility, structural funds, cohesion policy, and other instruments, a number of key electricity and gas projects in Central and Southeastern Europe have already come online and makes the EU energy system overall more resilient to the disruption. We have more pipelines interconnectors and more liquid natural gas terminals across the EU. And now in terms of investments, we need to import sufficient LNG and pipelines from other suppliers, but also we need to strengthen the grids and the interconnections. We need to strengthen the storage capacities. We have now these plans, and for REPowerEU, 210 billion euros until 27 will be mobilized. In terms of projects of common interest, this have played and will continue an important role. So being supported through Connecting Europe facility, and this project of common interest allow member states to face also the recent hostile supply cuts from Russia, about 20 billion cubic meters of gas transmission capacity to mention here, and the interconnector Poland and Lithuania, for example, the Baltic pipes, but also the interconnector Greece-Bulgaria will guarantee new supplies for the EU overall. Several PCIs are expected to be completed in the coming years, including several storage projects in Southern Europe, in Greece, in Romania, in Bulgaria, as well as LNGs. And besides the support, we also see the role and the expansion of the Southern gas corridor, potentially to 20 billion cubic meters per year, to play a major role to supply Southeastern Europe and the Western Balkans. These are, I would say, the main things I would like to say here. In addition, it's the whole work on energy efficiency, on renewables, which we need to increase significantly, not only the targets, but we put in place a mechanism, at least at EU level, to support their deployment. And it's not that we have just more ambitious plans or targets, but we also have allocated resources, and also the whole regime of taxation, the whole regime of state aid is now much more favorable and encouraging this transition. We also have, if you want, other type of initiatives at local level, global level, like the Clean Energy Ministerial for hydrogen, where we try to create a global ports coalition, which to enable better integration of hydrogen into these ports, to decarbonize activities of the ports themselves, but also to help integration of renewables, to decarbonize the industrial activities, industrial clusters, which are very often in the proximity of the ports. And this is very important, and already 50, the biggest ports around the world, have joined this coalition. And therefore, we also try now at the European level to support a network for the ports interested to mobilize in hydrogen. Constanța is definitely among them, and also Mangalia, for example, in Romania. But all the ports also which are in the Black Sea can look into this and contribute and be active in these activities which we promote, with a view to securing a green energy transition, but also fostering innovative approaches, tapping the potential for new technologies, for new energy carriers, decarbonizing and making clearer and stronger than ever the link between sustainability, decarbonization, but also building new industries, building new jobs in the region, and also strengthening energy security in this way. And these three elements work really hand in hand, and gradually will start to pay off also in terms of affordability for the energy system and for the citizens, which are and have to be at the core of the energy transition as well, everywhere in Europe, and not only, and including also in the Black Sea region. So this is a bit of the message I wanted to pass, and thank you. Hopefully I can listen to you now. So back to you.
Mr. Constantinescu, for your very comprehensive and interesting presentation, very informative one. You shared with us about the details of the EU energy strategy. You stressed the importance of intensification of our efforts in ensuring affordable, sustainable, resilient, energy, and you stressed the importance of investments to secure transition period in this new extraordinary circumstances. I would like to thank you again, and since you are online, I would open the floor for possible questions addressed to you. Are there any questions from audience? You are most welcome. If it's not the case, I would like once again thank you and wish you all the best in your everyday important activities and future endeavors. Thank you, Mr. Constantinescu. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be with you here today, even online. Thank you.
Thank you. And we shall proceed with our session. We have today 8 panelists, and it would be my pleasure to give the floor to the first panelist, Honorable Mayor of Constanta, one of the oldest cities in the region, having the history of 2,600 years, having the biggest port and very important port in Black Sea. And since we started a bit late, and since the distinguished mayor will be leaving soon, that's why we just change the order of our speakers. And before, I would like just to introduce him. Of course, you know him very well. Well, he has a very rich professional experience, senator in the Romanian Senate, member of the following boards, many boards: Defense Committee, Public Order and National Security Committee, Transportation and Energy Committee, Abuse Control and Petitions, head of Romanian delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and he's the author of 5 books and many dozens of articles published in recognized international journals. And he has many medals and awards: honorary professor of the Naval Academy, Nicola Aptsarov in Varna, Bulgaria, Dr. honoris causa of the Angel Kanchev University of Ruse, Bulgaria, honorary professor of the Naval Academy of Constanta. And on the 1st of December 2012, of course, 12, he was promoted to Rear Admiral. It's our pleasure to have you with us, Honorable Mayor of Constanza, Mr. Virgil Kitzak. The floor is yours, sir, and please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ambassador, dear panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to have a speech, to have an intervention at this very important conference dedicated to a very, very important topic. I'm speaking about the energy during these days in the circumstances of the war running by Russia against Ukraine. And from this perspective, I think we should discuss about the energy in the context, speaking not only the energy itself after the recovering after COVID, but speaking also the changes in geopolitical pictures and landscape, speaking about the changes in the security, which embraces many aspects like food security, energy security, or even military security, and so on. I understood that there is a translation in English, yes? May I speak in Romania if it's possible, yeah? In Romanian language, thank you.
This war in Ukraine changes dramatically the security architecture of the world, and this happens today as we speak. Generally, it's not just a crisis, but also opportunities. This war confirms and increases the strategic importance of the Black Sea, and even more. And of course, the importance of the Constanța municipality, which I represent here, as a pole of stability and development in the northwest area of the Black Sea. Black Sea, in my opinion, will remain on the medium and long term a geopolitical polygon, which is testing and where the new world order is created with the new forces, relationships between the actors on the world level. The Black Sea will go more and more through even more and more crises and opportunities, economic, geopolitical, military, and so on, real high-grade storms, as we call it in the marine. The extraction of gas in the present maritime perimeters in our exclusive economic zone of Romania, and also in future, I mean here also the Neptune Deep perimeter, as well as the taking over of the functions of export of the cereal export from Ukraine to the Romanian and the world markets. This is some bitter consequence of the war being carried out in Ukraine. We were not actually not unprepared, but we're not able to totally exploit this opportunity. Exploiting the gas in the Black Sea, from my point of view, is a very important good change and has an important role in the security of Romania and Europe. At present, we consider that the explored perimeters at about 100 billion cubic meters. Let's say this is certain. We are speaking of very good quality gas. If you were to ask me after the talks I had with experts, apparently this is very modest estimate. In actuality, these reserves are much bigger. Of course, the people making the exploration are not interested in saying the truth about the size of these gas reserves. The exploitation in the Neptune Deep perimeter makes it possible, and if we add the other perimeters in the exploited or being explored in the area, and the design, let's say, we already have a perfect image of a huge potential, which is only expecting favorable public policies to be expressed and turned into account. But the perfect storm is also a reality in the Black Sea. The following risk elements can be noted, in my opinion: the military advance of Russia on the Ukrainian seaside of the Azov Sea, temporary or maybe permanent occupation of it, and blocking the Ukrainian ports in the Azov and the Black Sea, occupation of the Serpent Island, the blocking of the navigation and of the corridors of navigation to and from Ukraine, the dangerous approach of the war to the territorial waters of Romania, the perspective, the catastrophic perspective of the extension of the front from the to the Nikolaev-Odessa area, with the risk of occupation of the entire shore of Ukraine and of establishing direct land frontiers of this area between Russia and NATO. From my point of view, this is a catastrophic perspective. I wouldn't want to think about it, but it's important to have it in mind. The plans of Russia in the area seem to continue with multiple toxic effects, political, military, and economic, and so on, with threatening the position of Romania and of NATO in the region. The territorial advance of Russia in the region can directly affect all energy security projects. How can we fight these risk factors? Because the question comes, well, okay, these are the risk factors, we have a problem. How do we proceed? So how can we, what can we do about the policies of the Russian Federation? The Russian Federation is rather a stereotype. Russia is never and will never be a federation. Nothing of its actual behavior shows it to be a federation. This is a despot state. This is a tyranny. There's no federation, no real federation with Russia. So how can we fight these risk factors? By cohesion of the policies of the United States and European policies in the region, and the permanent cooperation of these policies. By a systemic increase of the presence of the political and military presence of these countries in the area, the role of Romania as an advocate of this presence in the Black Sea is decisive. The policies on a medium and long range in this area, the necessity for adequate and multiple policies in this sense, the targets of these strategies, and I mean here the reduction of the gas emissions and the increase of the weight of the renewable energies and lowering of consumption, and the diversification of sources and routes of import of fossil fuels are ambitious but also possible policies. We now should consider the very strategic important position of Romania towards the United States, considering the low dependency of Romania from gas import from Russia, and the significant production of electricity. Second, by implementing pan-European responsible and courageous policy of creating a real independence of Europe from the gas, petrol, and coal imported from Russia. This energy dependence encourages and favors the aggressivity of Russia, Moscow's aggressiveness. And fourth, how can we defend ourselves from the respective risks mentioned before? By direct investments, foreign and local. We have a fabulous potential, as well as niches of opportunity being opened, which in my opinion represent a fertile ground for strategic investments in different areas, like from green energy to transport and infrastructure, and even high tech, or from national public policies of good quality in the area of critical infrastructure. We must be very honest with ourselves. Our answer to the crisis seems to be limited. It's rather modest. Substantial investments in large projects are still being awaited, especially concerning the transport infrastructure, the projects of military equipment endowment, and relaunching the defense industry, exploiting gas reserves in our own territory, and so on. The reaction capacity, the speed, and the level of this reaction are impaired by the very modest and short-sighted policies. Considering the national level, where the consolidation of resilience in all the areas should be very important, and as a seaman used to storms and a lot of waters, I have the permanent tendency to see the opportunities in the middle of crisis. So the opportunities of the Black Sea are huge. I'm just a few of them. The United States are preparing a strategy for the Black Sea region. The European Union already is thinking of its regional policies in strategic terms. The relevance of the area of the Black Sea for the European Union is very important. The south of the flank of the defense has created policies and defense policies in creating of a fighting group of the NATO on the territory. National security has solid protection guarantees from the allies, of course. The main European capitals have finally understood that here in our region, the revision and advance of Russia must be stopped. To the west must be stopped, and we are also expecting substantial European investments in the area. Dobroja has returned in the first level of the European policies. We note important advances in the transport infrastructure and energy infrastructure. Hopefully there will be no obstacles against the military endowment, especially the naval forces. The Corvette issues, which was gained by a group with offices in Constanța. This would be very important because this program is still very sluggish for various reasons. We can't discuss them here. I am convinced, according to the information, that the visit of in a few days, the visit of the President Macron will definitely deal also with the issue of this military endowment program, which will have to be continued in this form, or rather in a different form, probably by means of a G2G agreement. This has to be done because you know, just an imagination exercise, what would happen if the decision 906 from 2016 wouldn't have been annulled by Dragna in 2017. Both British frigates at present fully modernized with all the equipment and fight sensors at full capacity for the missions. We would have had 3 corvettes, fully equipped corvettes and frigates. And in the context of what's happening here, not far from us, in the Serpent Island, or 51 kilometers from Tulcea, you see, it's very close. From the Kilia arm of the Danube. So there are also premises for rapid evolvement of policies of the power plants in Chernavoda, I mean the two nuclear reactors, and even if not directly in Dobruja, they also represent the construction of the newest power plant with this newest type of nuclear energy, the SMR. I would also like to mention as an opportunity the fact that we have a very solid instrument represented by the National Plan of Redressing and Resilience. I'm pretty sure that the list of opportunities is even longer, and by the debates today in this room, in this panel, we enjoy the substantial expertise of the experts present here. In Kostinești, they will probably be able to articulate an exhaustive list of priority opportunities for the Black Sea region in the energy, economic, policy and geopolitics political area. I will end by mentioning that the horizon of this crisis, we can see the land. So the opportunities, we see clear opportunities, present and future opportunities. For some of these, the window of opportunity can close very quickly. We need very fast sea people and power in our engines in order to reach the target before they leave our radars. You can be sure of one thing, of the capacity of our radar in Constanța to detect these opportunities. Otherwise, for the rest, we have to build. I would end suggesting by mentioning a suggestion from a distinguished member of the panel. Of course, the exploitation of the gas in the Black Sea in the national context and also in the Dobruja context, to have a benefit economically, this should be we should process the gas in Romania either by using it in the pharma industry or by using it in the chemical industry.
Of course, that would be great for Dobruja, for Romanians, if we don't export unprocessed gas. This remains a national problem which should be considered by politicians and by the government. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor of Constanta, Mr. Gitsak, for your very interesting, informative intervention related to this transition period, very extraordinary period. Thank you for sharing with us with your concerns. You mentioned rightly that Black Sea has huge potential and opportunities, and that we need a fast, very immediate action to be undertaken for regional cooperation, for modernization, for diversification, for strengthening the national security. Many thanks, and since I told you that the distinguished mayor will be leaving shortly, I would like to give the floor to those who have questions. Please, the floor is open.
No questions, only solutions. Thank you very much.
So thank you. If there are no questions, if not that's the case, I would like to once again thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your presence, for your intervention, and to wish you all the best in these difficult times. The next panelist is Mr. Sándor Bende. I would like just to say that he has no special intervention, but he's ready to share with you with his vision on perspectives, on possible solutions for this difficult period. And I want to introduce him. He's the chairman of the Committee of Industry and Services of the Chamber of Deputies. He has a degree in legal sciences and a master's degree in European Public Administration. His political career began in 1990 when he became a member of the Democratic Alliance of Hungarians in Romania. In 1997, he was elected a member of the Executive Bureau of Alliance. And between it was between 2009 and 2017, and he was territorial president of UDMR Gheorgheni. Is that the right pronunciation? Okay, and between 2004 and 2016, he was a country councillor within the Harghita Country Council, respectively chairman of the Commission for Youth and chairman of the Commission for Urbanism. In the Romanian Parliament during the 2016-2020 legislature, he served as vice president of the Committee on Industry and Services of the Chamber of Deputies, and since December 2020, he is chairman of the Committee of Industry and Services of the Chamber of Deputies, coordinating several areas, including industry, services, energy, mineral resources, competition, and public procurement. So, Mr. Bende, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear guests, dear colleagues. You see, we are facing an unprecedented transformation. Unprecedented in terms of wide in the field of energy. And this happens across the world. The switch from fossil to other types of energy is very acute and very important nowadays from different viewpoints. Obviously, previous speakers have mentioned the conflict near our Romanian borders, the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine, a painful conflict which no one wanted, at least not us. Given this context, we should see what are our opportunities, what are Europe's opportunities, what are Romania's opportunities, what we have available, and what we can cook. So, if we, from a simple analysis, Romania is not doing bad at all. Romania has an exceptional energy mix, and I think no other country in the European Union has so many opportunities. And here we may speak of hydro energy, of nuclear energy, solar power, or, well, the wind is available, any of them. Of course, in some of the cases, Romania is still in initial phases, still doing the first steps, but I always say that the longest trip starts with the first step. And in the Romanian Parliament, the Committee for Industry and Services in the Chamber of Deputies set up two working groups to develop two important laws. The first one is offshore wind, so because we don't have such legislation, and another one for hydrogen. I have heard both of them mentioned previously by previous speakers. We should not reinvent the wheel here, because there are already countries which have, well, not lengthy experience, but they do have experience in producing power with the help of the wind. Recently, I was a member of a delegation to the UK, and I wanted to see what they do in terms of regulations in the field. And when I hear talks about urgent actions, we need to move fast. Well, I have to say that fast action is not that fast, because even in a country where We already have 10 gigawatts power installed with the help of wind, and by 2030 they want to get to 50 gigawatts. By 2050 the forecast goes to 100 gigawatts, while Romania consumes about 7.5 gigawatts per hour. So they right now, only with the help of wind, have a much higher installed power. So in that visit, I found out that in the UK, starting from T0, from moment zero, when they start the investment until the first kilowatt is produced, that takes anywhere between 10 to 13 years. So it's not very easy. So when we speak of urgent or very fast, we still need to understand that it takes time. If we want to replace anything, we need to put something back. If we want to stop the coal-based plants, we need to replace them with something, and such transfers or transactions should happen without impacting on the consumers. We need to take time and work professionally, because otherwise citizens or consumers will suffer. And in our century, when we are so dependent, we are not even aware how dependent we are on power. This is very, very dangerous. About nuclear reactors, that is indeed a huge opportunity. Romania can build more, pretty fast, maybe faster than it would take to implement an offshore wind project. We could build other 2 nuclear reactors in Târnăvoda, and as the mayor mentioned earlier, and the newest SRM technology can be implemented, but it takes time, and it takes about 8 years after project commencement. But as far as I know, nothing has commenced yet, so we are only talking about opportunities, hopefully from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, from money from other investors. Hopefully we will take advantage of these opportunities, but we don't always need to rely on or to look at what is not possible, what doesn't work, what we don't have. Transelectrica, our transport operator of the Romanian grid, so Transelectrica has on the table very many applications, about more than 3 megawatts, applications for connection by power generation units. And the issue here is that basically Transelectrica no longer has connection and transport capacity, and this needs to be solved, because right now at this table, when we speak about production units, if we speak of nuclear production units, we speak of Târnăvoda. If we speak of offshore wind production units, we are talking about the same area. But this area is at its maximum transport capacity. Without investment in the transport grids, we can build, but we will no longer be able to connect with the networks to transport the energy and serve the citizens. And I'm not only talking about energy, I'm also talking about natural gas. It's a good thing that the law was amended so that in 4 or 5 years, the first molecule, the first gas molecule can be extracted from deep areas of the Black Sea. That's great. Now, I have to get back to the beginning of my intervention. The conflict area near Romania. I don't know how much stability and predictability will be able to provide to investor. I don't know whether investors will be willing to invest as long as we still have a conflict nearby. This conflict should end as soon as possible for the welfare of us all. So far we haven't had the law. Now we have the law, but we have a different problem, and I believe investors are not happy at all about it. But hopefully such matters will be solved very, very soon. And of course, Romania is facing yet another problem when we speak of Romanian gas. As I mentioned, we need added value. We need gas for heating energy, but the gas, but it would be better for Romania to create added value. If we can use the gas for raw material to produce synthetic materials, to produce something that is beneficial and brings added value, then Romania only stands to gain, Romania and Romanians. But these are very complex matters. Somehow, I believe that at some point we gave up these ideas. We closed down factories working with gas as raw materials. They went bankrupt. We did not. We were not careful enough. Well, I won't get into details, but we need to see what we can do so that it doesn't happen anymore and we produce added value. On the other hand, Romania needs distribution grids because 35%, 40% at most of Romanian citizens benefit from the gas benefits, and that is not fine as long as Romania is the only EU member state with significant gas and crude oil reserves and has the least natural gas reserves. So we need to change something here. I know the government initiated certain projects, and from previous operational programs, from the current PNRR, from the Angel Salini program. The target is to eliminate carbon emissions, but it was accepted that natural gas should become a transition energy between fossil energy and green energy. It will take, I suspect, at least 20-30 years for this energy to become beneficial for our society, but we need to use this. We need to capitalize on this because the countries around us, Hungary, Austria, Germany, not to mention, and so on, have a natural gas distribution grid which is very well developed, and we have to admit where we have natural gas distribution grids, we have important economies. So this is boosting the economy and the industry, the presence of natural gas. So all in all, Romania does have opportunities, does have an amazing energy mix, but we still need to work here and there on the legislation to be able to regulate certain fields, because today when we speak of the offshore wind, we still don't know which is the Romanian institution which will open tender procedures for a wind farm. A wind farm to produce power, who will grant the concession rights. We need to put these together on paper for people to know and do something in this field. Similarly, if we speak of hydrogen, more and more people speak of hydrogen, but very few people have seen it. There are production units, but I haven't seen much of what happens with the actual hydrogen produced, how we use it. There are two visions. One is to use it instead of natural gas or in a mix with natural gas. That's another vision for mobility, but actually there are several such research initiatives, but for an area to use hydrogen only, we don't have it in Europe, yes, or a city which only uses hydrogen-powered public transport vehicles, not really. I did see here and there such vehicles, but a city with a full network, not yet. So we need regulations, we need legislation to enable us to initiate such activities. We need technical standards, because the future is here already. The future is not waiting for us. So if we decided that we are going to eliminate CO2 emissions, then of course we need to replace with something, and we will have to see the solutions as quickly as possible, because some countries are more advanced, some countries are lagging behind, and I think we are somewhere in the middle. You should know that it is not too late, not yet. We are in a good trend. The conditions are not always similar to what we see in other countries. If we speak of technical conditions for offshore wind, we can take the British example, but we don't have the same conditions. In terms of the depth geography of the Black Sea, because with us 100 meters away from the shore we already have depths exceeding 40 meters. In the UK it happens 113 kilometers away from the shore. They have 40-meter depths there, so they can have fixed production units, because the floating ones are much more expensive, not to speak about air currents, which is not the same as in the UK. Here we have much more unfavorable conditions. The wind is not as strong, so we need to analyze all these aspects when we are talking about implementing offshore wind projects in Romania or other projects. I won't take more of your time. I won't ask too many questions, because in my speech actually I raised more questions than I provided answers, but I wanted to raise your attention to specific issues in terms of implementation, especially when we are speaking about very, very short deadlines, about urgent matters. In this field, nothing goes fast. Nothing fast means 10 years. Thank you.
Many thanks for your thoughts from the national perspective, for the experience Romania has. And I was personally impressed yesterday at the opening of the exhibition on Romania gas and oil. I learned more, and well, really, you have a diversified system of energy, of usage of energy resources, from nuclear to renewables. It's very impressive, and you mentioned that, of course, you have more to do in the legal sphere. You mentioned also the importance of the recently adopted offshore law. Well, nothing is perfect, of course, and it needs the new approaches, new modern, especially in these circumstances and conditions. And I'm sure that these big opportunities Romania has and potential is very important and attractive for investors, especially in transition period in the energy sector. And if you have questions, please, I would just open the floor again for possible questions from audience. If not, we shall proceed further, and we have amongst us the next distinguished panelist, Ambassador Tatiana Iosiper. She is a special envoy for energy and climate diplomacy from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Romania. Ambassador Iosiper was appointed special envoy for energy and climate diplomacy of the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in September 2021. It shows the importance the government of Romania attaches to this very special field, very, I mean, important field. And of course, every solution, every innovative approach needs skillfulness of diplomats, experienced diplomats. It's my pleasure to meet Ambassador Iosiper here. Well, unfortunately, we did not manage to meet within BISEC. She was also representing Romania in the Committee of Senior Official, as the senior official of our country until 2016. And I was the senior official of my country from the end of 2016. Anyway, and she has experience of 30 years serving for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She served in Washington, D.C., and twice in 1996-2000, and from 2001 to 2006, and Tel Aviv, 2007-2013, and she was the Romanian representative in the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization, as I mentioned already, in the Committee of Senior Officials from 2013-2016. Ambassador Iosiper has degrees in engineering and mass communication. Madam Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kocharyan, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, dear fellow panelists. I apologize for my voice. This is, I think, the end tail of a cold that I've been nursing for a few days, but I hope I will be able to go through my presentation. I just prepared a few words, but I'm really looking forward to a lively debate. We've heard so many interesting things from you, Mr. Chairman, and I will try to pick up on some of those in my presentation as well. Again, it's a pleasure and a distinct honor to be able to address you here in Costinești, the iconic sea resort of our youth. There have been about 30 years since I visited Costinești, and I have very fond memories of this place. I would also like to welcome the participation of the representatives from BISEC, Ambassador Kocharyan, because BISEC is a premier economic cooperation organization in the region, and a forum that brought together at the same table countries for over 30 years, countries with a vested interest in promoting good neighborly relations at the Black Sea. Ladies and gentlemen, the present security situation in Ukraine brings to the forefront, more than ever, the issue of energy security and the importance for the European states to get rid of their energy dependency from Russia. This was a particularly important decision-taking by the European leaders. Phasing out energy dependency on Russia as soon as possible is an extremely ambitious goal, especially given the tight timeline. We remain fully committed to all efforts to diversify routes and energy sources, and we support a common approach at a European level to coordinate national responses and options. Romania is ready to join in all the actions and initiatives by the REPowerEU plan, including, for example, the EU platform for joint purchases of natural gas, which we would like to see operational as soon as possible, hopefully in time for the next winter, and the strengthening of the storage capacities. We welcome that REPowerEU plan, and you've heard Mr. Constantinescu talk at length about what it means and what it contains. We welcome that this REPowerEU plan recognizes the regional and national circumstances that determine the use of a specific set of energy sources and technologies, such as nuclear energy and natural gas from domestic production. For an efficient green transition, public and private investment in renewable energy is essential and needs to be stimulated, with a well-managed green transition being an engine for growth and competitiveness. Our conviction is that energy security does not stop at the border of the European Union, and that is why we have taken steps to interconnect our energy systems with neighboring states, both EU member states and partners with whom we share a common vision and values. Especially in the current context, identifying new gas sources and new supply routes with better energy connectivity must serve the entire region. We're also increasing our efforts to enhance our energy independence, mainly through the development of renewables and emissions-free nuclear energy, and also using gas as a traditional energy source. I've mentioned this before. Germany uses a different term for a transition energy source. They use bridge energy, because a bridge gives a more visual clue that it's eventually coming to an end. So sooner or later, gas will have to be phased out, as all fossil fuel energy sources are. We see increased interest in investment in energy production, but also in the diversification of natural gas imports. Romania has a chance to maximize its domestic production, and we have heard already from previous speakers about the positive outlook for beginning of production at Neptune Deep in 2026, the imminent production of BSOG, Black Sea oil and gas, of about 1 billion cubic meters a year. Also, internal production is onshore gas production as Caragele deposit as well. You've also heard of our nuclear plants, the 2 new reactors, 3 and 4, and also the introduction of small-medium reactors as well. Romania already plays an active role in facilitating access to imports from alternative sources, pipeline or LNG, and in this respect, the Southern Gas Corridor from Azerbaijan and Brua pipeline, part of the vertical corridor, are of particular relevance. We're looking forward also to the IGB, the Greece-Bulgaria interconnected, to become operational as well and help in the gas transit in our region. But reaching energy independence from energy imports from Russia means developing renewable energy sources as well, particular wind energy. And I'm really happy, Mr. Chairman, of all the information that you have provided already on wind energy here at the Black Sea, because Black Sea offers a great potential for wind. According to the sources carried out by the World Bank and Center for European Policy Studies, Romania and Bulgaria have an energy capacity generated by offshore wind farms of around 100 gigawatts, of which 76 would go to Romania. That's why the piece of legislation that you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, is extremely timely and extremely important. Therefore, we are ready to assume a regional leadership role in the field of offshore renewable energy, convinced that such an investment will contribute to job creation, strengthen energy security, and combat climate change. I would also like to mention something that Mr. Constantinescu brought up from Brussels, the importance to keep in mind in all our demarches, Republic of Moldova and Ukraine. We always, in all our efforts, we keep their energy needs as well. As you all know, probably the recent synchronization with the continental Europe, with the ENTSO-E of the energy systems of both Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova, those were extremely important and will contribute to the energy security of these two countries. And for the Republic of Moldova, the infrastructure infrastructure that came online very timely at the end of last year, Iași-Ungheni-Chișinău pipeline, offers now an essential alternative of supply. As you know, we also offer the Republic of Moldova fuel aid and gas storage capacity in Romania. Dear friends, the sustained efforts to find alternative energy sources have a positive outlook and, in my opinion, would lead to the speeding up of the transition to green energy, an accelerated reduction of the fossil fuel consumption, increased energy efficiency, and the production of much cheaper renewable energy sources. And yet, the dilemma of short-term solutions remain. Here too, I believe that the vision at the European level crystallizes a series of clear directions for mitigating the direct effects of this crisis on European energy security, both from the perspective of functioning market and also from the perspective of security of supply. And just to conclude, I would like to bring to your attention a recent statement of Fatih Birol, the Secretary General of International Energy Agency, my favorite leader to watch and an excellent communicator. He has said that the disruption to global energy supplies from Russia's invasion of Ukraine has only just begun, and that the energy rationing, starting from the large industry facilities, may be on cards in Europe this winter, unless efficiency doesn't improve and demand doesn't cool. Fatih Birol said that better efficiency, renewable sources, and making the most of existing supplies would increase energy security. I believe he's right on point, and as we can, we also, Germany already started energy savings campaign. We should not let this crisis go to waste. The measures we envisage in response to Russian aggression in Ukraine will reduce our strategic vulnerabilities, will increase energy security, and pave the way for further emission reductions in the years to come. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to our debate.
Many thanks, Madam Ambassador, for your very interesting intervention. Really, once again, you stress the importance of energy security, energy efficiency, importance of investments aimed at creation of new jobs, because we know that the energy sector lacks personnel, and of course that would contribute to creation of new jobs. And you mentioned the importance of common values and common visions towards, solidarity in new approaches in tackling also problems relating to the climate change and many others which emerged in completely new reality. Many thanks, and I wish again to ask the audience, please, if you have a question. Because it's the first question from audience.
I'm a hero.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mulțumesc, sunt Teodora.
Thank you, Teodora Valsilca, News Energy. I would like to ask the ambassador, what are Romania's strategic projects on energy security, projects you are promoting now, and where? This is my first question. I have two others, but I would like you to ask questions after each answer. Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. I'm happy that our panel becomes a bit interactive. You meant strategic projects that would help us to gain our energy independence. As you know, a decision made by the National Defense Council indicates two ways: development of renewables and nuclear energy. The nuclear energy with the development of the other two reactors in Chernavod, and as SVR. So this is a very important project for Romania because, as you know, it is our position that we, without emission or carbon-free nuclear energy, we cannot reach our climate targets, more specifically to be carbon neutral by 2050. About gas. As you know, Romania has built some of the vertical corridor, BRUA, and its use to ensure energy security is very important in the region. As I mentioned, we are soon soon we will see the commissioning of the missing link, the interconnector between Greece and Bulgaria. The commissioning of this interconnector will lead the way for the gas networks to go north and will enable us to help other countries in the region with their energy security needs. Iași-Ungheni-Chișinău pipeline is also very important. The Republic of Moldova now has additional options for energy supply, and this is very important. Are there projects to be implemented soon in Romania based on our strategic partnerships in the context of the war in the Ukraine? Or let me rephrase, the war in the Ukraine requires now strengthened ally presence in our country. My question is, are you aware of strategic projects to be implemented soon in Romania to strengthen our energy security? And what happens with the partnerships with America in amount of I think 7 billion euro. It was announced 1 or 2 years ago. So when will the billions agreed with the Americans be here? Thank you. The partnership with the USA, that intergovernmental agreement signed by Romania with the United States, is obviously part of our strategic partnership with our main foreign partner, the United States. It is advancing. If you follow up, you see concrete steps taken here. Recently, the location for the first SMR, small modular reactor, was determined to be placed in a region where there were coal-based power generation facilities. This is a new sign that we are moving towards clean energy sources. So the project is advancing as it was designed and then announced and signed. There is permanent progress here. And my last question, please. In 2030 is the first very important milestone for decarbonation. Could you tell us more specifically, because we keep hearing about potential, but I want to ask, what is the precise capacity for hydrogen or CCS? Give us some figures, some targets assumed by Romania for which you are working, the entire governmental team. Thank you. Our targets, our milestones for 2030 are obviously included in Fit for 55. There is legislation under development at European level, which will have to be transposed in the national legislation. I cannot say I cannot mention right now the targets for hydrogen and carbon capture and storage, but as we heard earlier, there is legislation, including for hydrogen, which is currently under debate. So this is ongoing, and obviously Romania intends to develop a national strategy for hydrogen, and all capacities will obviously be described by these projects. Obviously, we want to produce green hydrogen from renewables. As you know, and as it has been mentioned, hydrogen will be used for mobility and to produce, to use the energy, solar or wind energy during peak times, so also for energy storage.
Important questions, and many thanks for your professional responses. Madam Ambassador, so since we shall be skipping, I think, coffee break envisaged by our program, what do you think? There is a slot for coffee break. If you wish, we can have a short break. If not, we shall proceed. Coffee break? Oh, okay. Let's proceed, and I would just kindly ask the panelists maybe to shorten a little bit their presentation. And the next speaker in my list, Mr. Nikolai Havrilets, energy expert. And Mr. Havrilets is an expert in the field of energy and former president of the National Energy Regulatory Authority. Prior to the appointment, he successfully held the positions of Technical Services Engineer and Human Resources and Regulation, Technical Authorization Manager in the largest natural gas producer in Romania, SNGN, Romgaz SA, and Chairman of the Board of Directors, Chairman of the State Domains Agency between 1998-2001, Administrator, General Manager of the SC Gascope SRL between 2001 and 2012, Vice Chairman of the National Union of Employees of Romania. He is member of several important national and international organizations, including the following: Board of Regulators of the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, General Assembly of the Council of European Energy Regulators, Regional Regulators Energy Association, and Romanian National Committee, ERRA and WEC, CNR, CME. He holds a degree in mechanical engineering from the Technical University of Cluj and has 33 years of experience in engineering and the natural gas sector, of which 19 he is in management positions he has, and 3 in central public administration. For special merits in his professional activities, Mr. Havrilets was awarded the National Knight Decoration of the Order of the Star of Romania, Romanian Star, in 2000, and since 2009 he's a member of the Rotary Club Mureș. So, Mr. Havrilets, the floor is yours.
Many thanks for your very long presentation. Această prezentare atât de lungă arată că
this very long presentation, introductions, shows that since we are talking about fossils, probably we also have dinosaurs with us. You know, I'm trying to revive a bit. My first my first participation in FOREN was in 2012, 10 years ago. And on the agenda back then, we had some basic elements, the well-known trilemma. Our distinguished colleague Virgil Mușatescu will have tomorrow a wonderful presentation of this history, the trilemma. There are 3 elements. First of all, we need supply security, especially since power is vital, because people can die without this service. Second, we need to take care of the environment, and here there was this huge fight between energy production from fossil sources, because on the other one hand we need to respect the environment, and on the other hand we need to preserve thousands of jobs in the field of fossil fuels. And third, we had affordability, what we call today the vulnerable consumer. I was talking about fossils. Things change. Every 2 years, things would change. In school, in geology, we learned that the most renowned examples of fossils would be the trilobites and then dinosaurs. And in this case, we are talking about the most important fossil elements, hydrocarbons. And we want to set free of them. As a philosopher, I think Heraclitus said, one person cannot bathe twice in the same river, because the river water will never be the same, and that person is not the same the second time. And it's the same with us in this very fast change of elements which are defining our European pathway, European journey. First of all, we had the package in 2009, which we only transposed in 2012 by law 233. Then we had the support for the first wave of renewables. I think relatively successful, because in 4 years we managed to attract 11 billion euro investments, which have been and are still supported by the green certificate system. 1.3 in photovoltaic, which is little. I'm saying little because the current European provisions say that there will be a focus on photovoltaic. And I'm here today with this presentation. 2 years ago, the World Bank published an interesting study, the offshore wind potential in the Black Sea region. You see in gray, we have territorial waters. Romania has a very good position between Tulcea and Constanța. We have 2 areas, one for fixed wind farms and one for floating. Together with Bulgaria, there is a discussion that we could create an energy hub, a clean energy hub, which would be important for Southeast Europe and for hydrogen production. This is why I was talking with Mayor Kitsak. Constanța area is very important. Besides the opportunities provided by the Black Sea in the energy sector, we have development opportunities for new investments in natural gas processing and the shipping, which Constanța area could provide for possible chemical products and for hydrogen transport, because unlike the legislation in 2012, when the renewables were a priority, this time renewables are no longer a priority for access to the transport grid, and we'll have to define storage elements either in batteries or storage supported by green hydrogen. But of course, Dobroja will be the winner, the great winner in terms of development, in terms of jobs, local jobs, attracting young populations for these technologies which are not easy to handle. They require important specific training. We cannot speak of low-skilled jobs as it happened in mining areas 30 or 40 years ago. The Black Sea area is important for us, for the people in the field of energy. I would not speak now of other strategic areas, but it is important for us for two reasons: gas production and wind energy production. In terms of energy production, I'm happy that together with investors from less deep water producers, I'm talking about an association with several smaller companies, and in 2014 we managed to approve through ANRE, we approved access to the grid systems called entry-exit points, with which, unlike the power system, the gas transport operator may calculate whether the demand side has a profitable production, and the fee will cover the investment, then the transport operator would perform the investment. It happened, so at the end of this month, with the Transgaz investment, and I want to congratulate them for this, the first gas molecule will arrive from Corbu area through the national transport grid, with grid extension by 35 kilometers made by Transgaz. Our national legislation did not allow the Energy Regulatory Authority to allow the transport operator to do the same, to power in the transport grid. It was not the obligation of the transport operator to do the same as the gas transport operator. And here I'm a bit confused, because I do remember the 90s professionally. Back then, the national transport system was proudly transporting 33 billion square meter of gas. I'm talking about Transgaz. Now they transport 11 billion. But when an applicant wants to, a producer wants to inject, they are told there is no capacity. Similarly with Transelectrica, although before 1990 they transported 22,000 megawatts, now they transport, let's say, 10,000. And the answer is the same for a power producer. There is no capacity. So all of a sudden 66% of the capacity disappeared. It's interesting. Given that we do have such opportunities, it's true we should coordinate with what we see in the latest communications or guidelines by the European Commission, the guidelines on state aid for environment and energy. They specify clearly what are the conditions to finance new developments. However, I have the feeling that the national legislation is delaying the enforcement of such new provisions, both from such guidelines. In January there were communications by the European Commission on permit issuance much faster than now. I remember here that in order to simplify red tape, the Ministry of Energy granted building permits for BRUA directly for these connections for natural gas producers connection to the Transgas network, and for other strategic projects, building permits issued directly by the Ministry of Energy, which is provided in an initial draft of the water management law in the Black Sea area to obtain permit and for new investments in the Black Sea area, new investments in power. So they should be issued by the ministry to simplify the procedure until the projects are finalized. The investor will have the obligation to come up with all permits and licenses. So my proposal is that, given that in this forum we also meet to discuss proposals and ideas, my proposal is that investments in renewables exceeding 200 or 250 megawatts should be authorized for construction directly by the Ministry of Energy, and then the investor will obtain all necessary permits until the project is finalized. Something that would take 2 or 3 years for wind energy, less for photovoltaic, but in the Commission's guidelines, they say we should have a one-stop shop, but we also have another such experience which did not work with regional development, and I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank and praise Mr. President Pende, who in the Parliament supported the proposal by the Ministry of Energy last year to simplify bureaucracy related to urban planning certificates and simplified Law 50 for granting building permits, so that investments in renewables can be authorized for outside the built area. So that means 6 months earlier.
Mâine vă invit la panelul în care voi fi moderator, poate aflăm mai multe.
Many thanks.
We'll find out more.
Informative, comprehensive presentation and your proposals and ideas on the investments, which are very important for renewables. And I absolutely agree with you that we cannot imagine our everyday life without energy, without power, but sometimes we're obliged to enter the same rivers sometimes. That's why we have to find different rivers to enter for finding new solutions. Thank you once again. Is there any question from audience, please? You are most welcome to address. If not, yes, please, sir.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity for this questions. My Ion Comendat, I am from the Energy Institute of the Republic of Moldova. Do you know the pipeline, the gas pipeline Iași-Chișinău was built, and we are very happy with the Romanian side who contributed to the construction of this gas pipeline. But there is a question: when will we have enough gas sources so that the pipeline may transport the gas quantity corresponding to the capacity of this pipeline? Thank you. Thank you for the question. The investment of extracting natural gas from the less deep areas, I mean the Black Sea oil gas will start at the beginning of July, will bring 10% of the annual consumption of Romania. So we need 11 billion. So there will be a new source in addition. So about Neptune Deep, due to the delays in the issue of a law which could be more friendly with the business environment, the investors, instead of having already functional gas reserve in 2021 as first considered. It will start in 2027, but the reserves are important. It's about 4 to 5 billion cubic meters per year. That's this could cover also the consumption of Moldova. That's about 1 billion cubic meters per year. This is how we could help Moldova. This interconnection is the transport system is very important. It was sponsored by the European Commission. It's a strategic common interest project. Another source which is being developed in this period for Romania is the Azerbaijani gas, and when the connector between Greece and Bulgaria is finished, it may reach Romania through the Brua pipeline, 2 to 3 billion cubic meter per year from the pipeline from the southern corridor. There are talks being organized. We had several meetings at the ministry in Azerbaijan. Our minister Virgil Popescu even obtained the agreement of Azerbaijan in order to deliver to the gas transport area to Brua, to Bulgaria, Romania, and to the Central Europe. This is an additional source of natural gas. Of course, we can also talk about liquefied gas, but I think this is more complicated.
Thank you. Any other question from the hall? If it's not the case, it would be my pleasure to thank again Mr. Aurelets for his presentation and give the floor to Mr. Stefan Popescu, Associate Professor of the National School for Political Sciences and Administration in Bucharest. And Mr. Popescu is the former Secretary of State of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania and Public Affairs Director of ENGIE. The floor is yours, Mr. Popescu.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I will switch to Romanian. Și aș dori chiar să...
I'd like to challenge Mr. Ambassador Kucherian, because this is a regional forum of energy, and since it's an regional energy forum, it's interesting to get out of the Romanian paradigm. It's true that the very rich interventions up to now allow me to leave the shop, the hat, the umbrella of NG, and have a look and address a few questions about the Black Sea, because we should see this region as a whole. It's a whole which is fragmented at present. It's true that the situation evolves very quickly, because the conflict in Ukraine, which we very well know, is not over yet, but at the same time I think we should also consider the possibilities for cooperation with other states in the region beyond the hydrocarbon transit. Bringing hydrocarbons from Azerbaijan is of course important. I mean, bringing them to the Balkan area, from Greece, from Alexandroupolis, also, but of course this transit will increase a lot the value of Turkey. Turkey remains contesting power. We should realize that, and which brings into the energy equation and of the Black Sea also the issue of Russia as an energy actor. At the moment when we have a consumption of 55 billion cubic meters per year. They have their own reserves, which they will connect to the gas network from Turkey. They found these resources in the Black Sea, but the dependence is about 96% about the natural gas and 86% for oil. Turkey is building, because the cooperation in energy in the Black Sea, they build their own nuclear power plant in Puyuk. There you see with the help of Russia, and you see the geometry of paradigm in the Black Sea. Another issue which we should consider is that the states at the Black Sea are now in actual gas revolution. Of course, gas is important in the energy transition, but it's also very important that these abundant sources of gas should not, they can go to the Black Sea, and Turkey has the talks with Israel, which also discovered very important. Cyprus is also interested in the European market. There are terminals of LPG. Croatia, Albania is also in connection with the United States, and also the terminal Alexandroupolis, which is there is an agreement with the United States to increase the import capacity of LNG, but I think these should not been the only opportunity. We should consider the technological gaps compared to the remainder of the European Union, because we see very well what's happening at present, that the thermal engine for Dacia, for instance, they are being gradually phased out in order for them to concentrate on the future electric energy of the future in Western Europe. We are talking about energy or industrial strategy. You can't have an energy strategy without an corresponding industrial and energetic strategy. We must consider that the household consumers form the majority. Even in the lockdown, there was an increase in consumption. In Hungary, we had Hungary has Bulgaria has an industry. So starting with Armenia, Mr. Ambassador, Armenia, Georgia, Romania, Republic of Moldova, they are in demographic decline, which raises the question of the manner in which these how this energy market will look like in the following 2 decades, including the capacity to attract investments. There is a very interesting article in a past number in Foreign Policy called "The World is Flat." It's about the intrinsic connection between this demographic stability and the growth rates, economic growth rates. And of course, these growth rates show you the capacity to attract investments. So then, all these things, I think, we should be taken into consideration. We should also consider a certain competition between the states for the Black Sea. Poland, for instance, is trying to absorb as much as possible from Ukraine. We'll see what's going to be left of Ukraine, and the nuclear power plants of Ukraine are all in the southern and east area. there are still two not occupied by the Russian Federation. We'll see what happens, and also the large reserves, gas reserves, are not in Romania, not in Bulgaria. Bulgaria has a reserve of about 100 billion cubic meters, but the most important ones are in the Caspic Sea area. Even maybe 3,000 billion cubic meters. It remains to be seen whether they can be exploited. We should also think of the European funds and the cohesion policy, which of course is intertwined with the funds supporting the energy transition, considering that the reconstruction of Ukraine will require a lot of money, a lot of funds. So, yeah, that's about it. I also would also like to say that Romania, indeed, as Mr. President Benda said, is in a very enviable position. So it's very well to connect as much as possible to what's happening in Brussels, so that Mr. Mayor was speaking about the importance, the admitted importance of strategic importance of the Black Sea. We should attract an economic interest also towards Romania, and also towards this region. We need investments in industry plants and batteries. There is an important investment in for the production of batteries, because if there is a technological gap, then it would be very difficult for us to recover from it. And I was saying that it's very important, one more thing, maybe it's not really related, but it is nevertheless, the presence of Romania in the expert committees from various European organisms is missing, so it's absent. So it's very difficult when there is people, there's a French or a Danish person who are very far away from what's happening here. It's very difficult for them to be acquainted with the realities here. It's very important to create transversal associative structures, for instance, on various energy branches, distributions, where we should associate with other countries in order to be as representative as possible and to be taken into account by the commissions of the European Parliament, the most relevant commissions, I mean. That is the General Energy Directorate. We notice very much about our connection with the various associative formulas. We note that the companies there say, yes, of course, we can go in 20 years. We can go in 20 years to go to 100% hydrogen. When someone from the European Commission hears other companies that they saying that they can do that, of course they insist on us to, you know. These are a few various ideas from various areas, but these are also some food for thought, directions for thought, which should make us realize that transformations are very serious and that the competition is very strong. Thank you.
Many thanks. Mr. Popescu, really you inspired us for brainstorming. At the same time, you went beyond your country's experience and then touched upon of the common interest. You mentioned different countries, their potential, their interests, their opportunities. And one is obvious that we have to act immediately. We have to act on bilateral basis. We have to act on global basis, on regional basis, to find real better solutions. There is a word which we discussed yesterday with Professor Mușatescu. I am very thankful for our cooperation and his support. And we remember the name betterment, which is used for about 25 years in United Nations system. Really, we are for betterment, and we are completely in different reality, completely in different reality. And the region is very vulnerable, and there are new challenges, there are new problems, new difficulties, and really we are here to continue and to try to find a new approaches. Really, thank you for mentioning also my country. I am in capacity of the neutral staff member of the international organization, but of course my country also is facing difficulties and having diversified sources of energy. So at this stage, if there are questions, I would appreciate the questions to Mr. Popescu from the hall, please. If not, I will give the floor. Thank you once again, Mr. Popescu. Thanks for your presentation, for your ideas, for your interesting thoughts shared with us. Mr. Valerio Binic, he's the Director, Regulatory and Competition Affairs, Enel Romania. Please, Mr. Binic, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency. With your kind permission, I will stick also to Romanian. And I will abandon the general landscape which has been very nicely, generously and harmoniously covered by the previous speakers, and I will try to go on some concrete issues. Enel
is the energy distributor in the area. Enel Energie is the supplier with the largest market share in the area. Enel Green Power is a huge investor in the area. Obviously, we are still interested to see what are the strategic options. In my morning presentation, I indicated the opportunity for Dobroja to become an area mainly for hydrogen production, while the European Union intends to produce internally 10 million tons per year and relies on a production of 10 more million tons nearby the continent, and given the concrete conditions northeast of Dobroja, the EU plans might slightly change, and Romania's renewables potential could be used to produce hydrogen. In the morning, I mentioned the possibility for this green hydrogen to be used in Liberty Galați plant. I also talked about green mobility in the Danube Delta, but we also need to think how we can move this energy potential from this area towards the rest of the Europe. And the question was whether it is more advantageous to produce hydrogen here and then transport it through the pipelines towards Central Europe, or whether it is better to transport the power produced here and have electrolyzers near the consumption areas, which are generally hard to abate industrial processes which rely on high processing temperatures, or on transport areas. And also in the morning I was wondering whether we are going to cook using hydrogen. Probably not. And then we need to think whether we are going to use hydrogen for heating, and where will the necessary hydrogen be produced for heating. The problem was how to distribute the power produced here towards the rest of the country, because right now the area produces about 700 megawatts, and the area already hosts the Cernavoda nuclear plant and wind farms. So Currently, the Danube is crossed from two hubs, Isacta and Ternavod, using two lines which sometimes may become congested. So given the context whereby we cannot transport the onshore power, we discuss of additional offshore power. So what is more advantageous? If I can transport the energy produced in this area, if I can have additional capacity, what is cheaper? To continue producing onshore because there is land and potential, or do I really have to go offshore? Moving on. Studies so far have shown potential, I mean, in general terms, potential of the sea, but there are navigation corridors, there are protected areas. So we need to start identifying more specifically which are those areas where we indeed can develop offshore wind energy. Then, as a representative of the electroenergetic sector, I'm wondering how will the energy get from offshore wind farms, how will it get onshore? Will each wind farm develop their own cable to transport electricity to the shore? And what will be the impact in the total project capex? Moreover, onshore, I need plants which are able to take over the energy. Right now we have Tomis North, Ajija South, which are already saturated with onshore production. So my question is, where will we have the offshore projects, and how will the cable be connecting with the 2 points? When we talked about the cable connecting Romania and Turkey under the sea, we had already an onshore issue. In the UK, they found a solution, one cable, until up to an area in the middle of the sea where they build a connection plant, and everyone producing in the area gets connected to that plant. So basically they pay that operator a fee because they use the operator's installation. But the question is, what is the type of activity carried out by the operator? How is the operator regulated? How do we make sure that the tariffs are cost reflective, transparent and non-discriminatory? On the other hand, as Mr. Pendes mentioned, in England the water depth is 40 meters. In Romania, at the distance where we want to produce, we may have much deeper waters. Do we build a floating station? It's unheard of yet. So we have problems to solve. Moving on, we have the local component. Helicopters able to fly to the location, to fly above there for 40 minutes to undertake search and rescue missions and then return. Maritime platform crane operators, doctors, on-board doctors, hospitals for injuries and burn cases. These were questions raised by potential investors who said, okay, I can build my installation there, but I want to know that onshore I will have the necessary infrastructure and superstructure able to cater for my needs. And then this offshore wind industry will need this superstructure infrastructure which generates costs. Let's imagine we are commissioning a first wind farm, 100 megawatts, and it will need all the superstructure across the Romanian coast, and we'll pay for it. And this might become financially burdening. So we need from the very beginning a critical mass of projects to commence quite simultaneously, so that everyone would contribute and cover the costs for this infrastructure and superstructure. Otherwise, if we have one investor with reasonable capacity trying to make the investment, they will be suffocated by such costs. So we need to debate more. We need to bring up knowledge from experienced countries. For example, in the North Sea, the average wind speed is 21 meters per second. Here we have 7 meters per second. In Romania, if the wind speed exceeds 20 meters per second, we stop the turbine. So we have different conditions. We need more such events to debate this shared experience and then develop a strategy to inform legislation, and only then investors will happily invest, having this predictability perception. Given the time pressure, I will stop here. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Mayor. Very informative and specialized, professionally specialized in your intervention, and thanks that you touched upon very important issues relating to onshore and offshore, providing also information about the main activities of Enel, one of the largest distributors, one of the important distributors of energy, and you mentioned that the necessity of continuation of debates for finalization of argumented, approaches to attract the investors, which is very important at this stage. Many thanks again. If there are any questions from please, madam.
Foarte pe scurt, domnule Binic, aș vrea să vă întreb.
I'd like to ask you, considering what you have already said, and also considering that at present we don't know who could sell these to auction these offshore areas. That it takes 10 years from what we find out here now in order to implement such a project. When do you see realistically? So when do you see on a time horizon when Romania could have effectively 1 megawatt of wind power, offshore wind power? My group does not invest in offshore at present, so it's difficult for me to have an opinion. If I were to discuss how long something could be done, something what my group does, yeah, it would be easier for me to have an estimate. There are so many things which are unclear, that I cannot give you a trusted answer. I'm really sorry. Călin Milk, do we know the limitations of renewables in Romania today? It's a question for me, is it? I really don't get it. What do you mean about limitations? So from the without stocks, we have limitations which reach 24% of the potential, unofficially, of course. Limitations. So Transelectrica has given up publishing on their site the limitations when they reach 15% for the renewables, but from the system automation. Yeah, you mean the curtailments? I mean production limitation, actually, the curtailments. Is anyone investing in renewables without stockage today when we have reached 24% of the potential? My answer at present is that there are interested investors who push the projects forward and who are having talks about the phenomenon is called hybridization. It's existing renewables to which are added storage capacities, new capacities. But the issue is whether the technical connection approval is modified, because that would be a new solution study and a new procedure which might take very long. So then investors say something like, I have a park about 100 megawatts. I will add a battery of 20 megawatts. I don't consider it as an installed power of 120, because I'll never produce actually 100 megawatts from the potential. So anyway, I undertake not to inject more than 100. I have the approval to mount the 20, and I will remain using the old approval for the connection. This solution is probably adopted, as far as I see, adopted by Transelectrica, but the final word belongs to the ANRE. The other countries have adopted this smart 8-year system, but we are close. We have reactions like, wait a minute, they're using for their own services 20 kilowatts, and up to now I thought that he has turbines who produce 40 megawatts. What can I do if for the 20 kilovolts he will absorb the 20 megawatts in order to load the battery, to charge the battery? Because up to now I could keep the distribution for technological consumption, for our own consumption. But if he wants to charge the battery on my power line, then there are issues. But slowly Romania will reach the smart 8-year. My estimate is that this will happen this year. Yes, but the Vice President Carlota was saying that in 2016. I still estimate this will happen this year.
No other questions from the floor, from the hall. I would like to proceed with our panelists. Is it okay? No. I hear myself through this device. Hello? No. Something happened. Thank you very much. We shall proceed with the next panelist. The next panelist on my list is Ms. Florina Shora. She graduated from the Faculty of Geology and Geography at the Bucharest University, specializing in geological and geophysical engineering. She has more than 25 years of postgraduate professional experience in petroleum and mining sector in Romania, including more than 25 years of postgraduate professional experience in development of national legislation and its implementation. She also holds a certificate in environmental management. Her career includes various professional positions in the petroleum sector and public administration. She has very strong experience and expertise in transportation of EU legislation and development of secondary legislation in relation with various directives in the field of primary energy resources, particularly the Hydrocarbon Directive and CCS Directive. During 2004-2006, Ms. Florina Shora was involved in the preparation and implementation of projects co-financed by international institutions and organizations, World Bank, GEF, USTDA. Member of the Romanian team for the negotiation and preparations negotiation sessions at the UN Committee for Sustainable Development, Mining Charter. She also acted as project assistant manager in the EU-funded project Interconnection gas pipeline between Romania and Republic of Moldova. Currently, she has been acting as senior advisor in the NAMR's Petroleum Directorate. She is the member of the Romanian National Committee for the World Energy Council. Madam Shora, the floor is yours.
Chair, prezentarea mea de astăzi vizează investițiile.
My presentation today focuses on oil exploration, so getting back to the dinosaurs, as Mr. Garilets would say, but not for long, because tomorrow my colleagues will deliver a presentation on the geothermal sector, and we invite you there. Investments in oil exploration are very important. We will speak of their role. In the previous presentations, we've heard a lot about improving the legal framework by adopting amendments to the offshore law, which helped investors to trust the taxation system again. But the question is whether this is enough, because we will need natural gas, hydrocarbon and in the next decades, because gas is a transition element. Although this is a round table on the Black Sea, just like the offshore law amendment did not only target the offshore, but extended and granted facilities for high-depth offshore facilities. My presentation will comprise the entire sector because we cannot separate them. The pointer doesn't work, apparently.
Mică problemă tehnică.
A slight technical glitch.
După cum s-a vorbit până acum, securitatea energetică.
As we've heard earlier, energy security has become again a priority in the context of today's global policy. Romania has a favorable position given the diversity of energy resources, among them oil resources. However, the development of the sector depends not only on favorable geological elements, but also on the tax and regulatory frameworks, and given the challenges faced by the oil industry in the past years, both in terms of regulations and in terms of the pandemic context, it became very important now to ensure predictability for investors. This is very important on medium and long term.
Cadrul legal. Resursele...
Legal framework. Oil resources are public property of the state according to the Romanian constitution and to the oil law. Investments in the upstream oil sector are object to a royalty or tax system, and the legislation includes several laws. The basic law is the oil law, adopted in 2004. The offshore law, we've been speaking so much, which was recently amended for taxation purposes, and we also find general aspects in the tax code and in the tax procedure code. So the question is, do we need other improvements in the legal framework? And ANRM is the competent authority according to the Romanian and European legislation. The Romanian legislation is transposing European directives in the field. Our agency also plays a role regarding the law transposing the directive on safe offshore oil operations. We are a licensing authority. However, these are not our only tasks. We are competent authority on the mining law. As European legislation, we are a competent authority for extractive industry waste management, and we have an important role in the European initiative on raw materials. We should think of the importance of mining for those minerals which are essential for the renewables industry, like solar panels, or we should think of various devices we are using every day, for example, our smartphones. Another law, emergency ordinance approved by law transposing the directive on the geological storage of carbon dioxide. Our experts participated, including in Brussels when the directive was negotiated, and later on contributed in the transposition. Other important directives which are reflected in our activity, which is also a competent authority for the recognition of natural mineral waters in Romania. Our authority was set up in 1993, subordinated to the government. Now we have 126 positions at the headquarters and in our territorial departments, 19 departments, and this is not too much. Getting back to our topic today, we have here a chart with the development of natural gas production in the 100 and some years. We see a peak in 1986 and then a steep decline until 1996, let's say, where we see somewhat a more stable situation. The decline in production sort of decreased. This natural decline is a normal process for any mineral deposit. If we need more natural gas resources, we need to do something to compensate the decline in natural gas production. From the very beginning, the objective of our agency was to replace existing resources with new resources which can be exploited to compensate the natural decline of the deposits. and possibly to increase production. And there are three ways: either new discoveries following exploration activities currently in complex geological areas in high depth places, or offshore, or deep offshore, because Romania is a mature country, and the deposits which were already available have already been discovered and exploited. Another direction is to continue investigations and develop marginal deposits at somewhat at the limit of economic exploitation. They should be exploited efficiently, and the solution would be to transfer these deposits from larger operators who are interested in larger deposits towards investors, companies which have technical and financial capacity and may continue producing efficiently for quite many years. A third way is to use new high-performance methods to increase recovery in exploitation with existing deposits. We have here a result of our work in the past 26 years. We have color-coded presentations of concessions. We have here both areas which have been assigned after the 10 rounds of bidding according to the oil law, organized starting with 1996, the last one in 2010. We have here areas owned by OMV, Petrom and Romgaz, which are a result of areas managed when they were granted when they were autonomous companies. And in blue you can see, in light blue, you can see those areas we intend to offer for future bidding rounds. You may access the map. You can see it if you visit our stand. Here we have the offshore areas, offshore exploration areas, sum up 17,141.46 square kilometers. Column 1 indicates the areas, then the holders and their shareholding, and the last column is the type of agreement. Those that started with exploration are exploration agreements, then they continue with operation. The latter ones are exploration and operation producing, which are already producing, held by OMV Petrom. Offshore exploration. Neptune Deep 19 area.
OMV Petrom și ExxonMobil.
Holders are OMV Petrom and ExxonMobil. Exploration and production in Romania. History. The first significant discovery was in 2012, a deep water area. The exploration program was finalized by digging by 4 more exploration activities in 2016. Exploration investments are huge, more than 1.5 billion euro. the holder submitted, according to agreement provision, submitted a statement on a potential commercial discovery. This happened after the exploratory digging activities, so in April 2016, as everyone knows, the deadline to declare the commercial discovery could not be complied with. One of the reasons was the old offshore law, so that the deadline was postponed for the end of 2022. We have under approval a draft government decision. Since the shareholding was changed with ExxonMobil Exploration in favor of Romgaz, so the project is under approval. And the next phase, after declaring the commercial discovery, will be to move to development phase that will last a few years with very high costs, because in offshore they may reach some billions US dollars. Other important projects: 15 media area. The holder, Black Sea and Oil Gas, announced production activities on June 28, 2026. There will be a grand opening. We should mention that since 2019, our institution confirmed geological resources and natural gas resources in Ana and Doina sites based on the technical economic studies developed by the holder. The exploration program was finalized in 2021. Right now, it is under evaluation and confirmation for gas resources discovered on Lira structure. We have here a table with various works undertaken in 2007, 2021, which cover, let's say, the period considered for the energy strategy 2007-2021. I included here the areas and the holders with results, with discoveries after drilling activities. You should see the huge exploration efforts required, both technically and financially. The costs are huge. Onshore as well, it's about 5.5 billion lei, more than 1 billion euro. That's a significant amount. The revenues from oil royalties, the revenues to the state budget, you could see there have been some fluctuations. 2020 was a more special year given the COVID pandemic. However, with the development and operations in new projects, hopefully the revenues to the state budget will increase and we will see new development elements. I quote here from a study developed in 2018 by Deloitte that considered the contribution of exploration and hydrocarbon production in the Black Sea to the development of the Romanian economy. You see that we already speak of a different level with an impact in the GDP, in job creation and revenues from royalties and taxes and so on.
Sorry for interrupting you, Ms. Shora. Just the organizers requested me to try to complete our session within the next 10-15 minutes. Okay. Because the roundtable is envisaged to take place in the same hall. I am very sorry.
I have just 2 slides, just two, the most important.
Thank you.
Ce mai este de făcut?
What else? We have already heard about the importance of human resources. A growth element would be to change the organization and structure of the National Mineral Resource Agency according to the amendment to the mining law to turn it into an authority. It should have happened 1 year ago. It hasn't happened, yes. Proposals on improving the activity of our institutions. There have been proposals. We have an important study developed by the Deloitte team and financed by a US program implemented 3 years ago. These are concrete proposals. Let's not forget that since we were set up, we have had more and more responsibilities, and we are fewer and fewer. Initially, we were 163 employees, and we have new and new tasks. For example, the amended offshore law, which stipulate that we should check investments in the upstream sector, investments deducted. So this is a very important role. Other topics of interest regulated by the oil law, which require urgent legal solutions, would be to transpose the open door policy, which is a procedure provided by the hydrocarbon directive, and that would mean shorter time for oil agreement. So that would go in parallel with the organization of rounds. We also need to clarify and simplify the transfer procedure, because in the context of changes to the oil law, the procedure is longer. We need to simplify procedures for granting the necessary permits for oil operations. A huge problem for the industry is access to the necessary lands for oil operations, and the solution would be to declare such operations, such exploration and exploitation operations, as operations of national interest. And another area which requires an approach is the data regime. The current text of the oil law is sufficient to ensure confidentiality, but there is still a need for clarification on which information should still be classified. Thank you.
Many thanks. Mishora, for your information, rich information provided on comprehensive activities of the agency. And well, I don't have much time to sum up your interesting ideas and the information provided, but one of the aspects well expressed by you was that to try to do best to ensure predictability for investors. I think you are doing your best in this direction, which is very important. Thank you again. And we have the last speaker among our panelists today. I am very sorry that we are we're beyond our time limits. Mr. Adrian Borote, he is the Vice President of Romania Wind Energy Association and Group Strategy and EU Agenda Division Director at CEZ Romania, one of the most active companies in Romania's energy sector. Before joining the company, Mr. Borote was the Vice President of the Romanian Electricity Regulator, ANRE. He holds an executive MBA degrees from Carl's Pittsburgh in the United States. And you know that the CEZ group ranks among the largest power utilities in Europe, both in terms of installed capacity and number of customers. And in December 2010, CEZ purchased 100% shares of TMK Hydro Energy Power System, followed by a period of finalizing the transaction. The total installed capacity of the hydropower system in Caras Severin is approximately 18 megawatt, as the company owns 4 dams and 4 hydropower plants. Each hydropower plant has currently no more than 10 megawatts installed capacity. Mr. Borote, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Definitely it's high time to be efficient as always. We know what to do, so I'll just shoot. First, two answers to the questions previously, and I switch now to Romanian, just for my colleagues. Domnul Wild.
Mr. Wild, if still in the room, last year the limitation was below 1%, not 24%. Mrs. Vasilka, indeed for offshore wind we need at least 10 years, in theory, in other countries, so at least 10 years in Romania. Thank you, I will get back. Of course, our country turned from net exporter to net importer. That was before the conflict, so we need to install new power generation capacities regardless the fuel or the source. By the next winter we must have more capacities so that we reach a balance, and eventually the marginal price, very expensive today, should no longer be set by the gas plants. The solution here is indeed renewables, both photovoltaic and wind. They may be commissioned in a period between 6 months and 2 years, and as you know from Transelectrica information, in the wind area we have about 7,000 megawatts. The documents are still valid, and we all know 2030 means at least double installed capacity in wind energy. I believe that given the potential, we will reach this faster and install more megawatts. Of course, we still have the question, who will connect it? What are the costs? When will they be actually connected in terms of the transport network especially? But hopefully this will be solved. Even more so when we have European funds for renewables, and we still have an open call for the NRRP. It was just extended by 1 more week, so until June 22, our colleagues will submit projects for new solar and wind capacities, and obviously for storage. There will be a separate call for storage. This is necessary for system balance. I can confirm from the viewpoint of distribution grids that we are prepared to receive more renewables. Of course, Dobroja is an area with a huge energy surplus. Each drop of additional energy requires lots of investments and huge waiting time, and we need alternative areas in the country. In terms of cooperation, of course, our association, including more than 40 members and representing 2,500 of the 300,000 megawatts installed in wind energy, we are working under the umbrella of European Wind Association, and we cooperate with all EU member states. We have proposals from Turkey to join the Offshore Wind Association in the Black Sea region, and very soon we will provide a favorable answer here. And obviously, in our Renewables Academy, we are training specialists both for onshore, offshore, and photovoltaic. We already have the first more than 100 graduates. In the next 3 years, hopefully, we will reach more than 5,000, so that we have the necessary number of specialists for wind and photovoltaic energy across the countries. Moving on, of course, I have seen the EBG studies and discussions, and the conclusion is that obviously there is potential. We are interested especially in the near-shore part, because here the capex is even lower than onshore. The connection may be provided faster and cheaper. We still have all other questions that, with the support of President Banda, hopefully we will clarify soon. Here it was mentioned who will provide the permitting part. Last week in Brussels, the member state decided that permits to be issued for connecting renewables within 1 year at the most, compared to 2 years so far. I'm curious whether it will apply to offshore as well. However, both for onshore, offshore, and maybe for photovoltaic, we should think maybe to create a one-stop shop where all authorities, all permits, licenses should be issued at the shortest period of time possible. There are many things. We need to work with European funds, and we have already started this for production capacities. I know that for Transelectrica they have already allotted important funds for power transport from Dobroja. This would be coupled with the future offshore, but again, that will happen within 10 years from now on, not next winter. And this needs to be coordinated and linked with shorter connection times for future renewables producers. And one more thing, we are talking about support mechanisms. Besides European funds, we've been discussing the difference agreement, and I think the state should provide a solution by the end of the year. We would have legal solutions. We hope there will be more, and we have a very good signal from the banks, they started to no longer ask for PPAs. There are good signs in the market, and apparently all stakeholders are converging towards good solutions for renewables. Again, a urgent, fast solution for the consumption needs and for the willingness of the countries, including Romania, to become independent from Russian resources. Thank you.
Many thanks, Mr. Brote, for your comprehensive information, details provided on the activities of your group. And I'm sorry, but it concludes our session. And I would like to, because of the shortage of the time, I would like to thank again for all panelists for their very informative, very interesting, very professional, useful, helpful presentations, ideas, thoughts shared today. I would like to thank organizers of this very pertinent forum, the Romanian National Committee of the World Energy Council. And now, just concluding, I would like to express my firm conviction that this forum, which is organized on biannual basis, which brought together high-level officials, representatives, managers, decision makers on energy and environmental authorities from important companies and international organizations, will be another step, will be a successful step forward to a real contribution for our efforts aimed at finding immediate, innovative approaches for cooperation in the field of energy in this transition period, especially in light of extraordinary conditions. Thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Complexul energetic Oltenia garantează de 40 de ani siguranța sistemului energetic național. Pentru că vântul nu bate în fiecare zi, debitul apelor scade în arșița soarelui și nici soarele nu strălucește tot timpul pe cer. În schimb, cărbunele complexului energetic Oltenia mai poate furniza energie României încă 40 de ani de acum înainte. Și asta doar cu rezervele descoperite până în prezent.
Complexul energetic Oltenia. Energia pământului românesc.